Captain Ron adjusted his uniform as he stepped onto the grand hall of the Galath Trade Summit. The room shimmered with golden light from floating lords, and hundreds of alien delegates moved about, discussing trade, alliances, and political deals. It was Ron's third time attending the summit as a representative of Earth, and by now, he had learned one thing. Every species had its own customs, and some were stranger than others. The Xanthari, a towering reptilian species with dark red scales, were one of the most powerful factions present. They controlled dozens of star systems and had a reputation for being ruthless in business. Their leader, High Chancellor Vorak, was known for his cold, calculating mind. Ron had met him once before, and that Xanthari had treated humans with polite curiosity, but also with a hint of superiority. Tonight was an important night. The Xanthari had invited Ron to a private ceremony, a sign of growing trust between their two species. He was seated at a long table with other high-ranking officials, eating a meal that looked questionable, but to his relief, tasted surprisingly good. As the feast neared its end, High Chancellor Vorak stood up, raising his clawed hand for silence. The murmuring voices fell quiet as all eyes turned to him. "Tonight," Vorak said, his deep voice echoing in the grand hall, "we celebrate the growing friendship between the Xanthari Dominion and the humans of Earth. In our culture, it is tradition to offer a gift when a bond of trust is formed. And so, Captain Ron, we present you with a most valuable treasure." Two Xanthari guards stepped forward, leading someone with them. At first, Ron thought it was another Xanthari, but as the figure moved into the light, he realized it was a young woman, tall, slender, with smooth silver skin and striking violet eyes. Her long white hair fell past her shoulders, and she wore a flowing blue garment. She stood with quiet dignity, her gaze calm but distant. "This," Vorak continued, "is a rare Avalian, a servant trained in obedience. She has been gifted to you as a symbol of our goodwill." Ron's stomach turned. He had been in space long enough to know that not every species shared human values. But this, he clenched his fists under the table, forcing himself to remain calm. "I appreciate the gesture, High Chancellor," Ron said, keeping his tone steady. "But humans do not keep servants. We believe in freedom for all intelligent beings." Murmurs filled the hall. Some aliens exchanged confused glances, while others watched with curiosity. Vorak, however, remained unfazed. He tilted his head slightly, his yellow eyes gleaming. "I understand your customs, Captain," he said smoothly, "but rejecting a gift is an insult in Xanthari culture. This Avalian is not just a servant. She is a token of our respect. To refuse her would dishonor our people." Ron exhaled slowly. This was exactly the kind of diplomatic trap he had hoped to avoid. He had two choices: offend the Xanthari and possibly damage human relations with them, or accept the woman and find another way to free her later. He glanced at the young woman. She stood still, her expression unreadable, but her eyes, those violet eyes, held something deeper. Was it sadness, resignation, or something else entirely? Ron made his decision. "I accept," he said, the words bitter on his tongue. The hall erupted in approving cheers, and Vorak gave a satisfied nod. The Xanthari believed they had won, but Ron knew better. He wasn't going to keep her. The moment they left this place, she would be free. The woman was brought to his side, and for the first time, she looked up at him directly. "What is your name?" Ron asked quietly. There was a brief pause before she answered, her voice soft but firm. "Sari." As they walked out of the hall, Ron leaned down and whispered, "Don't worry, Sari. You're not a servant. Not to me. We'll figure this out." For the first time, her expression changed, a flicker of something unreadable, something close to hope. But neither of them knew just how deep the truth about her really went. Sari sat quietly in the small guest quarters of Ron's spaceship, the Horizon. The room was simple: white walls, a small bed, a desk, and a viewing window that showed the endless stars outside. It was more freedom than she had ever known, yet she felt trapped in a different way. She had been given to Captain Ron as a gift, just another item to be traded. But he was not like the others. He did not give orders, did not treat her as a servant. Instead, he had told her something strange. "You're not a servant. Not to me." What did that mean? The door slid open, and Ron stepped in. He was tall for a human, with dark brown hair and sharp but kind eyes. He carried a tray with food. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting it down on the desk. The meal was different from what she was used to. Some kind of bread, fruit, and a warm drink. She hesitated before picking up the cup. "You don't have to stay here," Ron said. "You can explore the ship if you want. You're free." Free. That word again. She studied him carefully. "You say I am free, but I do not understand. Do you mean I can leave?" Ron exhaled. "It's not that simple. The Scifi still believe you belong to me. If they find out I let you go, they might come after both of us." Sari knew he was right. The Scifi were powerful. No one escaped them easily. Ron leaned against the wall. "But I'll find a way to get you somewhere safe. I promise." Sari nodded slowly. She wasn't sure what to think of this human. He was different from the others she had met. Later that night, while Ron worked on the ship's navigation, Sari sat at the desk, staring at the ship's computer. She had never been allowed to access technology freely before. Slowly, she reached out and tapped the screen. It responded instantly. Curious, she began searching. She had seen glimpses of human history before, but now she wanted to know more. She read about Earth, about humanity's struggles and triumphs. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the most advanced, yet they had spread across the stars, not through conquest, but through curiosity and determination. She then searched something else. Avalis. Her heart stopped. The screen showed a historical record, an old news report from 20 years ago. The fall of Avalis. Royal family lost in Scifi invasion. Sari's eyes widened. She clicked on the report. It showed an image, a regal family dressed in silver robes, a tall man, a graceful woman, and a young child with white hair and violet eyes. Sari's hands trembled. The child was her. She had no memory of this. The Scifi had told her she was just a servant, taken from a conquered world. But the truth was different. She was the daughter of a fallen kingdom, the lost princess of Avalis. Her mind raced. Why had the Scifi kept this from her? Why had they given her to Ron now, after so many years? Footsteps approached. She quickly closed the screen as Ron entered the room. "You're still up?" he asked. Sari hesitated, then said, "Captain Ron, what do you know about Avalis?" Ron frowned. "Not much. It was a peaceful world until the Scifi took over. Their leaders were lost." He looked at her carefully. "Why do you ask?" She took a deep breath. "Because I think I was one of them." For the first time since they met, Ron looked truly surprised. He sat down. "Tell me everything." Sari told him about the report, about the image of the child, about the memories she didn't have. When she finished, Ron was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "If this is true, then you're not just someone that Scifi gifted away. You're a threat to them." Sari swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Ron's expression hardened. "We find out the truth. And we don't let the Scifi control your fate any longer." For the first time in her life, Sari felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Sari sat in the co-pilot's seat of the Horizon, staring at the screen in front of her. Her heart was still racing from what she had discovered. The news report had changed everything. She was not a servant. She was not just another Avalian. She was a lost princess. Ron sat beside her, deep in thought. He had seen a lot of strange things in space, but this was something big. "You're sure it was you?" he asked. Sari nodded. "The image? The child had my face, my eyes. It has to be me. Ron rubbed his chin. That means the Xanthari lied. They didn't just take over your planet. They erased your identity. The question is, why? Ceri's fingers tightened around the armrest. I don't know, but I need to find out. Ron sighed and leaned back. Well, we can't do it alone. We need information. And I know just the place to get it. He tapped the controls, and the ship's engines hummed to life. Within seconds, the Horizon jumped into hyperspace. A dangerous meeting. Their destination was Nova Outpost, a floating station on the edge of Xanthari-controlled space. It wasn't officially part of any empire, which made it the perfect place for spies, traders, and those who lived in the shadows. If anyone had information on the fate of Avalis, it would be found there. When they arrived, the station was buzzing with life. Ships from different worlds docked at its many ports, and the marketplace was filled with creatures of all shapes and sizes. The air smelled of spices, metal, and engine fuel. Ron led Ceri through the crowd, keeping a careful eye on their surroundings. Stay close, he said. They stopped at a small shop run by a hunched-over alien with 3 eyes and a metallic arm. His name was Jax, an old contact of Ron's. Captain Ron, Jax said, grinning. Didn't think I'd see you here again. Looking for something. Information, Ron replied. On Avalis. Jax's grin faded. His 3 eyes flicked toward Ceri. Ah, I see. He leaned in, lowering his voice. There are rumors, survivors hiding in the outer reaches. The Xanthari say Avalis is gone, but not everyone believes them. Ceri's heart pounded. Survivors. Jax nodded. The Xanthari hunt them. They don't want anyone to remember Avalis, especially not someone like you. Ron crossed his arms. So they know she's alive. Jax hesitated. Not yet. But if they find out, they won't stop until she's gone. Ceri felt a chill run down her spine. The Xanthari had spent years making sure Avalis was forgotten. If they knew she existed, they would do anything to silence her. She turned to Ron. We have to find the survivors. Ron exhaled. It won't be easy. Jax chuckled. Nothing worth doing ever is. He handed Ron a small data chip. This has the last known coordinates of an Avalian hideout. But be careful. You're not the only ones looking for them. The Xanthari's shadow. As they left the shop, Ron felt uneasy. Something wasn't right. Then he saw them. Across the market, 2 Xanthari soldiers were scanning the crowd. Their sharp eyes moved from face to face, searching. They're here, Ron whispered. Ceri tensed. Do they know about me? I don't think so, Ron said. But let's not give them a reason to look closer. They moved quickly through the station, taking side paths and narrow alleys. But the Xanthari were trained hunters. The moment Ron and Ceri neared the docks, one of the soldiers spotted them. You there? Stop. Ron grabbed Ceri's hand. Run. They sprinted through the crowd, pushing past traders and travelers. The Xanthari followed, their heavy footsteps getting closer. Ceri's heart pounded as they reached the docking bay. The Horizon was just ahead. The ship's entrance was open, the engines already warming up. Ron turned and fired his blaster at the ground, creating a burst of steam from a broken pipe. The distraction was enough. He and Ceri leaped into the ship, and the doors sealed behind them. Ron rushed to the controls. Hold on. The ship lifted off, soaring into space just as the Xanthari reached the docking bay. They fired at the ship, but the Horizon was already gone. A new mission. As the stars blurred around them, Ceri took a deep breath. That was close. Ron shook his head. Too close. The Xanthari are watching for anyone asking about Avalis. We need to be careful. Ceri clenched her fists. They don't want the truth to come out. Ron looked at her, his expression serious. Which means we're onto something big. He inserted Jax's data chip into the console, and a map appeared on the screen. It showed a distant, hidden world in the outer reaches. If there are survivors, Ron said, this is where we'll find them. Ceri's eyes burned with determination. Then let's go. The horizon turned toward the unknown, racing toward the answers that had been hidden for so long. Ceri was no longer just a lost princess. She was a fighter. And she was ready to reclaim her past. Ceri stood by the viewing window of the horizon, watching the endless stars blur past as the ship traveled through hyperspace. Somewhere out there, survivors of Avalis were hiding, waiting, and she was finally on her way to find them. Ron sat at the pilot's seat, studying the coordinates on the screen. The destination was a small, uncharted moon deep in the outer reaches. It was far from major trade routes, making it the perfect place for those who didn't want to be found. Ceri turned to him. Do you think they'll trust us? Ron glanced at her. They might, but they'll be cautious. After all, if the Xanthari find them, it's over. Ceri nodded. The Xanthari had destroyed Avalis, taken her people, and erased their history. If there were still survivors, they had every reason to be afraid. Arrival on the moon. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, revealing a desolate, rocky moon. It orbited a gas giant, its surface covered in craters and jagged cliffs. The coordinates led them to a canyon, where scanners picked up an underground structure. Ron guided the horizon down carefully, landing at the base of the canyon. If they're here, they already know we've arrived, he said. Ceri followed him out of the ship. The air was thin but breathable. Jagged rocks surrounded them, and the silence was eerie. Then, without warning, figures emerged from the shadows. Tall, hooded figures with silver skin and glowing violet eyes. Avalians. A man stepped forward, his face partially hidden under a hood. He held a staff, but his grip was tense, ready for action. Who are you? He demanded. Ceri took a deep breath. My name is Ceri. I am a Valian, like you. The man studied her closely. Then his eyes widened. He stepped forward, lowering his hood, revealing silver hair streaked with age. It can't be, he whispered. The other Avalians murmured among themselves. Ron looked at Ceri. I think they recognize you. The man took another step closer. You are the lost princess. Ceri's breath caught. She had suspected, but hearing it from someone who had lived through Avalis's fall made it real. She nodded. Yes, the hidden city. The Avalians led them through a hidden passage inside the canyon. The tunnel opened up into a vast underground city, structures carved into stone, glowing crystals lighting the paths. People moved about, dressed in flowing garments, their eyes filled with curiosity and hope. This is what remains of our people, the man said. We have survived in secret for 20 years. They reached a large hall, where leaders of the refuge gathered. The man introduced himself as Kale, one of the last royal advisors of Avalis. He confirmed what Ceri had feared, that Xanthari had not destroyed Avalis just for conquest. They fear our knowledge, Kale explained. Avalians were once peaceful, but we had something that Xanthari feared, technology beyond their understanding. Ron leaned forward. Technology. What kind? Kale hesitated before answering. Something ancient. Something powerful. A secret that could change the balance of the galaxy. Ceri's mind spun. That Xanthari had erased her people's history not just to conquer them, but to ensure no one discovered their secret. What happened to it? She asked. Cal's expression turned grim. The knowledge was hidden before the Xanthari invasion. And now, only one person can unlock it. Ceri felt the weight of his words before he even spoke them. You, Princess Ceri. The choice ahead. The hall fell silent. The Avalians looked at her with hope, with expectation. She had spent her life believing she was nothing more than a servant, but now she was something more. She was a key to a secret that could change everything. Ron placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to do this alone. She took a deep breath. If the Xanthari fear this knowledge, then it must be important. If I can help my people, I will. Kale nodded solemnly. Then we must move quickly. The Xanthari are always watching. If they learn that you are alive, they will come for you. Sari lifted her chin. Let them try. The lost princess had found her people, and now she would fight to reclaim their future. Sari sat in the center of a dimly lit chamber deep within the hidden Avalian city. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the stone walls, whispering of secrets lost to time. In front of her was an ancient pedestal with a circular indentation in the middle. Kale, the royal advisor, stood beside her. This is the last relic of Avalis, he said, his voice steady. Before the Xanthari invasion, the royal family protected the knowledge of our ancestors. Only someone of royal blood can activate it. Sari stared at the pedestal. She had spent her life believing she was a servant. Now she was being asked to unlock a secret that the Xanthari had feared for decades. Ron crossed his arms. If the Xanthari wanted to keep this hidden, then whatever's inside must be important. Sari took a deep breath and placed her hand on the pedestal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire chamber came to life. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and a soft hum filled the air. The indentation on the pedestal opened, revealing a small, crystal-like object. It pulsed with light, as if recognizing her presence. Cal's eyes widened. It still works. Sari carefully picked up the crystal. The moment her fingers touched it, visions filled her mind. She saw flashes of Avalis before the invasion. Tall cities, beautiful gardens, and a sky filled with glowing energy. And then she saw something more, a hidden vault, a place deep beneath Avalis, containing knowledge and technology that Xanthari had feared. Sari gasped and pulled back, the vision fading. She looked at Cal. There's something hidden on Avalis. A vault. Cal's expression darkened. If that is true, then the Xanthari may still be guarding it. Ron rubbed his chin. Then we need to get there before they figure out what we're after. The Xanthari's hunt. Meanwhile, on a distant Xanthari warship, a commander studied a holographic screen. Reports had come in from Nova Outpost. Someone had been asking about Avalis. The commander's reptilian eyes narrowed. He had spent years making sure no trace of Avalis remained. If someone was searching for its secrets, he needed to act. He turned to his officer. Send scout ships to the outer reaches. Find them. A difficult decision. Back in the underground city, Sari and Ron sat with Kale and the Avalian Council. If we go to Avalis, Kale warned, we risk leading the Xanthari right to us. Sari nodded. But if we don't, we may never get another chance. Ron sighed. This won't be easy. The Xanthari don't leave conquered worlds unguarded. Kale looked at Sari. This is your decision, princess. Sari took a deep breath. She had lived in fear long enough. If there was a chance to reclaim Avalis's history, to give her people hope, she had to take it. We go, she said firmly. Kale gave a solemn nod. Then may the stars guide us. As the horizon prepared for departure, Sari felt the weight of the future pressing on her shoulders. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but she was no longer the lost princess. She was ready to fight for her people. The journey to Avalis was silent. Sari sat in the co-pilot's seat of the horizon, staring at the stars outside. The thought of returning to her ruined home filled her with a mix of fear and determination. Ron checked the ship's controls. We'll be there in a few hours. No signs of Xanthari ships yet, but we should assume they have patrols near the planet. Kale stood behind them, his hands clasped tightly. The Xanthari do not forget. If they suspect someone is coming for the vault, they will be ready. Sari exhaled slowly. Then we'll be ready too. The ghost planet. When Avalis finally appeared before them, Sari's breath caught. The once thriving planet was now dark and lifeless. The land was covered in shadows, broken cities standing like skeletons against the pale sky. Ron's jaw tightened. They didn't just conquer it, they destroyed it. Cal's voice was heavy with sorrow. This is what the Scifi do. They erase everything that could threaten them. Sari forced herself to stay strong. The vault is still here. I saw it in my vision. Ron nodded and piloted the ship toward the coordinates she had described. They descended through the thick clouds, flying low over ruined buildings and empty streets. The silence was eerie. Then the scanners beeped. Ron frowned. We're not alone. A small Scifi patrol ship hovered near the ruins, scanning the area. Sari's heart pounded. They're looking for something. Or someone, Ron muttered. If they see us, they'll call for reinforcements. Kale pointed to a nearby canyon. There's a path through there. It should hide us from their scanners. Ron adjusted course, flying low through the rocky terrain. The patrol ship didn't seem to notice them. For now, the hidden vault. They landed inside a cave near the ruins of what had once been the Avalian capital. The entrance to the vault was hidden beneath the remains of an ancient temple. The air was thick with dust as they moved carefully through the rubble. Sari led the way, guided by the vision she had seen. Finally, they reached a stone platform with strange carvings. This is it, she whispered. Kale studied the markings. Only royal blood can open it. Sari stepped forward, placing her hand on the stone. A low hum filled the air, and the carvings began to glow. The ground trembled as a hidden doorway appeared, leading deep underground. Ron raised an eyebrow. That's a good sign. Right. Sari swallowed. We're about to find out. They stepped inside. The secrets of Avalis. The vault was unlike anything Sari had ever seen. Walls of smooth metal stretched around them, pulsing with a soft blue light. Strange symbols covered the floors and ceilings, glowing as they passed. At the center of the room stood a massive console with a crystal-like interface, similar to the one she had unlocked earlier. This is ancient technology, Kale said in awe. Far older than Avalis itself. Sari reached out and placed the crystal from the hidden city into the console. Instantly, the vault came to life. Holograms flickered to existence, showing star maps, complex blueprints, and energy readings beyond anything she understood. Ron whistled. This isn't just knowledge. This is power. Cal's eyes widened as he read the data. The Avalians were not just a peaceful people. They were guardians of something greater, this technology. He turned to Sari. It's the reason that Scifi feared us. Sari felt a chill run through her. The Scifi hadn't destroyed Avalis for conquest. They had done it to bury this knowledge forever. But now, it was awake again. The Scifi arrived. Suddenly, an alarm echoed through the vault. The walls pulsed red. Ron cursed. We've got company. Kale looked at the screen. The Scifi patrol ship must have detected the energy surge. Sari clenched her fists. Then we have to leave. Now. They grabbed what data they could from the console and rushed back toward the entrance. As they emerged from the vault, they saw the Scifi patrol ship hovering above. A landing team of armored soldiers was already descending. Ron pulled out his blaster. They're fast. Kale grabbed Sari's arm. Princess, if they capture you. They won't, she said firmly. Ron glanced at the horizon, still hidden in the canyon. If we can reach the ship, we can escape. Sari took a deep breath. Then let's run. The lost princess had uncovered the truth. Now she had to survive long enough to use it. The Scifi soldiers moved fast, their armored boots hitting the cracked ground as they advanced toward the vault entrance. Their weapons glowed with energy, ready to fire at any intruders. Sari's heart pounded. The knowledge they had discovered was too important to lose. If the Scifi captured them, all hope for her people would be gone. Ron pulled her behind a broken stone pillar. We need a plan. Fast. Kale crouched beside them. The horizon is still in the canyon. If we can reach it, we can escape. Sari peeked out and saw the Scifi patrol ship hovering above. Soldiers scanned the ruins, searching for them. We can't fight them, she whispered. But we can outrun them. Ron nodded. Then we run. The chase begins. They dashed through the ruins, keeping low to avoid being seen. The ground was uneven, broken by time and destruction. Then, over there, a Scifi soldier shouted. Blaster fire erupted behind them. Energy bolts struck the stone, sending shards flying. Ron pulled out his own blaster, firing back as they ran. Go. I'll cover you. Sari hesitated, but Kale grabbed her arm. He'll be right behind us. Move. They sprinted toward the canyon. The entrance to the horizon was just ahead. The ship's sleek silver body was half hidden by the rocks. A warning siren blared from the Scifi patrol ship. More soldiers dropped down from above. Ron ran at full speed, sliding behind a fallen column for cover. I hope you have a good idea, Princess. Sari looked at the ship, then at the massive stone formations around them. A thought flashed in her mind. There's a way to slow them down, she said. The canyon walls. If we make them collapse, it will block their path. Kel's eyes widened. That could work. Ron grinned. I like the way you think. The canyon trap. They'd reached the horizon, and Ron jumped into the pilot's seat. Strap in. Sari and Kale barely had time to sit before the engines roared to life. The ship lifted off, dust swirling around them. The Scifi patrol ship moved to block their escape. Ron smirked. Not today. He fired the ship's blasters at the canyon walls. The impact shook the ground. Large chunks of rock cracked and began to fall. The Scifi soldiers tried to retreat, but it was too late. A massive rock slide thundered down, blocking the path and burying part of the patrol ship. Sari let out a breath of relief. It worked. Ron grinned. Now let's get out of here before more of them show up. A new path. They blasted out of the canyon, speeding toward the atmosphere. The scanners beeped. More Scifi ships were on the way. Kale frowned. They won't stop hunting us now. They know we found something. Sari looked at the data crystal in her hands. The knowledge inside was more than history. It was power. A chance to restore her people's place in the galaxy. She met Ron's gaze. We can't hide forever. If the Scifi fear this knowledge, then we need to share it. Ron nodded. Then we find allies. People who can help us. Kale smiled. The Avalians were never meant to be forgotten. The galaxy must know the truth. Sari turned to the stars ahead. The lost princess had reclaimed her past. Now she would fight for the future. With the horizon disappearing into hyperspace, their journey was just beginning.